Okay, to talk about the freezing of college funding here in the United States, we're joined by Walt Heinecke. He's a professor of research, statistics, and evaluation at the University of Virginia School of Education, as well as a member of the American Association of University Professors. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Sean.
Okay, austerity measures hitting colleges in a big way, nothing new. But what we're talking about here, in no small part, the Trump administration, it's never easy to balance the budget of a college or university. But let's talk about the kind of concerns that the institutions we've been talking about are dealing with now.
Sure. I'd like to preface it by saying, this is about something much bigger than budget cuts
Sure.
and granting budget cuts and fines on universities in the United States. It's really about the eradication of free speech, the type of free speech of campuses that helped end the Vietnam War and apartheid in South Africa. At a larger scale, this is all about eliminating the institutional checks and balances in our society. Higher education and the media are the only two institutions really left that are free to criticize institutions of government, the military, economy, and politics that have all been captured by neoliberal hyper-capitalism and now fascism. Trump is basically waging a war on U.S. higher education with the same level of fierceness as he is on the Houthis. And if we step back even further, at an even larger scale, what this is all about with these budget cuts and DEI and visa revocations is really about white supremacy rearing its ugly head again in America.
Yeah, let's talk a bit more about that then. Speaking from the heart, tell me what you think about that, because colleges, I grew up in an environment, my father was a college administrator, my mom worked at colleges. They've always been kind of a bastion of free speech and free think to get students to really push the limits of what they do consider as they go to move on and make a living. So the Trump targeting colleges now, what does it do? What is the overall end game of this, and what do you think the major concerns are going to be?
Well, again, I think it's really about shutting down free speech and criticism in America. It's like the McCarthy era all over again. It used to be, are you now or are you ever been a member of the Communist Party? Now it's, are you now or have you ever engaged in supporting Palestinian women and children in Gaza? And essentially what we're doing is we're taking free speech, and one of the basic places in American society where criticism and critique and challenges and free thinking can occur. And I think that's what basically this is all about. And there are just many fronts to this war: the DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion attacks, cuts to grant funding agencies, cuts to specific universities for violating supposed anti-Semitism rules. Revoking visas is another way of trying to get at international students' basic tuition. Where they're basically amping up to starve the beast that can provide some modicum of critique and pushback and free thinking about what's going on in society.
Yeah, so that's the cause of what's going on out there. Let's talk about the overall effect, because we've heard concerns about research being cut and the effects that this could have in the real world, health benefits, high tech. What's at stake?
Oh, there's a lot at stake, So for instance, if we look at, the Columbia case, Trump indefinitely froze all NIH, National Institutes of Health grants to Columbia based on some anti-Semitism claim. This blocks new research awards and payments to existing projects without specific approval from NIH. They previously had cut $400 million of federal grants and contracts, including $250 million in NIH funding. Health and Human Services and the General Services Administration are reviewing $5 billion cuts over Trump's task force on anti-Semitism. What's at stake here is knocking off the pedestal the crown jewels of American higher education in terms of providing knowledge for scientific advancement, medical advancement, engineering advancement, and social advancement. And so what we're going to see is the ramifications of all these cuts, basically putting universities under and cutting off all those sources
Yeah.
of research that improve the human condition.
Well, where can universities look to get funding moving forward? Now, given the Congress is currently a GOP leadership, and the GOP, at least for now, will not cross Trump, is there any reason to believe that Congress could step in and restore funding? What about the courts? And what about private giving? People are strapped already.
Yeah, so let's take that one at a time. It's unlikely that the Trump-captured Congress is going to step in and do anything except for make it worse. Where can universities find alternative sources of funding? Well, we still have state governments, and we're funded oftentimes through state contracts. We have philanthropical, approaches of raising money from private sources. And then, some creative ideas are starting to come out, like universities issuing bonds to basically make up for the massive cuts in
Education, yeah.
funding. Yeah. In terms of what's happening next and how can things be restored, there are plenty of lawsuits going on right now. So a lot of these cuts are in the process of being litigated. So, for instance, there's a lawsuit where the ACLU and the National Education Association filed suit on the Dear Colleague letter violations of the First and Fifth Amendment rights that those Dear Colleague letters from the Department of Education have caused. There's also massive protests by citizens going on. We've seen across the country massive protests this last couple of weeks about this. The American Federation of Teachers and the Sociological Association have sued to stop the Education Department from enforcing the Dear Colleague letter on the basis that it overreaches Supreme Court decisions in the Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard.
Yeah, clearly the list goes on and on. So this is going to be going on, and it's something we're going to continue to follow. Walt, we want to stay in touch and reach out to you a bit later on, see where this ends up going. Walt Heinecke, we can't thank you enough for your insight.
Yeah, my pleasure.